Um, I'm here with my cousin, 2 or 3 times removed, Nanette Garrett, and she brought along her favorite cameraman, Randy Hall. Randy is a member of my family, the Nixon family, through my grandpa. Josephine Whitehead was Randy's relative. Josephine was a sister to my grandpa, James William Nixon II. So we're all family members here. So there may be some family secrets we tell that shouldn't go beyond the family circle. We're in Jacob Lake, Arizona. Jacob Lake, Arizona sits on the Highway 89, which branches here to Flagstaff, Arizona, and the north rim of the Grand Canyon. This is a resting, stopping place for people going to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And as much as there's no road across the Grand Canyon, once they get down there, they have to come back here. So we have a restaurant here, service station, used to have a post office, curio stop, cafe, or curio store. We have all kinds of services here for the tourist that wants a beautiful place to come and stay. We have a nice hotel here. We have, I think, about 20 some odd cabins that were built many years ago, very rustic. And this is a great stopping place. I just talked to a couple a minute ago from Louisiana. They're going to be here for 3 or 4 days. And this is their base to go to the Grand Canyon, the north rim of the Grand Canyon, to Bryce Canyon, to Zion's Canyon, to the Red Rock Country, staircase area. This is a place that people can come and spend a lot of time recreating, and it's gorgeous and beautiful, and see some of the most beautiful national parks in the country. So, Nanette seems to think that maybe I should talk a little bit about when I first came to Jacob Lake. In our family, when we've had people that are difficult to handle, young people, they're incorrigible, we used to send them to Jacob Lake. And Aunt Nina and Uncle Harold, who built this place, were able to iron the wrinkles out of us. And we came out better people by being here. It took them 6 years for me. I started when I was 12, and every summer I had to come until I was 18 and went on my mission. By then I was a better person with my mother and dad as a result of having been trained by my uncle and aunt. When I first came, it was in about 1942. I was 12 years old, and there was only a service station with 2 pumps, and there was a small restaurant and a post office, and we had about 20 cabins here. My job was to run the service station. In those days, we only had 2 pumps. They were the big glass type pumps that you hand pumped the gasoline up into the glass tube that sat above the pump, and then gravity, because we didn't have any electricity out there, the gravity would drop the gas down, and there was a marker on the glass tube that said 10-gallon, 9-gallon, 8-gallon, 5-gallon, so on. So if they wanted 5-gallon, I would just open the pump handle, and watch the gas come down till it got to 5, and then I'd shut it off, and they had 5-gallon gas in their car. We would have probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 cars a day that would come and get gas, go down to the North Rim, come back and get gas, get a sandwich, and Jacob Lake became a tourist stop for people that were in the area watching the various beautiful sights of these national monuments. Okay, first year, Aunt Nina, she was a Nixon. She was my dad's sister. She ran the place. Uncle Harold, her husband, Harold Bowman, he was a big, strong, burly man that was able to carry 500 pounds of beef on his back from the truck to the locker and hang it up in a cooler. Now, 500 pounds of beef is a lot of beef for anybody to carry, but he was strong. Aunt Nina was a beautiful woman. She was a nurse. She'd had a good education. And here comes Jackie, this little kid that didn't mind his dad and mom very well, so they sent him to Jacob Lake to train him. So I was put in charge of the service station. It was back right over here, and we'll have some pictures of it later. The second year I was here, we had a cousin on the Bowman side come and work here. His name was Mauricio Bowman, which is the Spanish pronunciation for Morris. He came from Mexico because the Bowmans had come out of Mexico many years before, when their parents and families were driven out of there. Mauricio and I were about the same age. He'd been raised in Mexico because that's where his father lived. That was Claudius, which was Uncle Harold's brother, Bowman. And we were about 13 or 14 years of age at that time. And we had our horses here, which we liked to ride. We'd like to get on the horses and go, and Uncle Harold didn't mind as long as we got back before dark. One night, Mauricio and I decided we were going to take a moonlight ride. And right down here is the little barn that we had our horses in. We had a krell that came out this way a little bit further, similar to the krell these people are working on right now. And inside of that, the horses grazed, and we had hay up in the, we'll show a picture of the barn here in a minute, that had a little loft, and we had hay in the loft that we would feed the horses every night. So after work, Mauricio and I said, let's go for a ride tonight. And so we went down and we got our horses, and we took off, and we went back up this canyon. This draw goes straight west, probably goes nearly a mile. It goes a long ways. But we got down there about a half a mile, and we thought we saw a bobcat go up a tree. And we could see its eyes up there as the moon kind of shined off of its eyes. But we couldn't really tell for sure where it was, but we had our pistols with us. So we were going to get a bobcat. In those days, they hunted bobcats, they trapped wolves and bobcats and coyotes up here. We had government trappers that they paid them to cut down the wild animals, so it was okay to shoot a wild animal. Well, we're down here looking up at this bobcat, and so we started shooting at it. And pretty quick, we were out of shells, and it hadn't fallen out of the tree yet. So Mauricio says, why don't you go back and get a flashlight so we can see for sure what we're shooting at. And we're out of bullets, so bring 2 or 3 boxes of bullets with you. So I was on Old Chief. He was my horse. I came back. I tied him up down at the barn here and walked up to the lodge to ask Uncle Harold if I could get a flashlight. He says, what do you want it for? I says, well, I guess I need to feed the horses. I was telling a little bit of a fib and he said, well, I thought you'd already fed the horses. And I said, well, no, I just gave them a little bit. I need to give them some more hay. He says, well, you don't need a flashlight for that. I said, well, yeah, it would help. So he handed me a flashlight that had about 4 batteries in it. And the stupid kid that I was, as soon as he handed me the flashlight, I turned it on and started to adjust the beam up on the ceiling of the office there. He immediately began to understand that I wasn't wanting a flashlight to feed the horses. I had something else in mind. But he gave me the flashlight. I left, went and got 4 or 5 cartons of shells, took off, went back up the draw. Mauricio was still there keeping the cat up in the tree. And so the flashlight helped some, but we couldn't really see it really good. But we were just down there shooting our pistols. They were 22 pistols. We shot all 4 or 5 boxes of those shells. It never fell out, never came down. We don't know whether we were, I'm not even sure we had a bobcat up there, but we thought it was. We got through, out of bullets, so we come back, and we came back to the barn down here, took our saddles off, put the horses away, threw a little bit more hay down from the loft so that we hadn't been telling total falsehood, and was going back up to our bunks. Well, this is the chicken coop right here. Who do you think was standing by the corner of the chicken coop when we started up to our bunks? But Uncle Harold. He was standing there with his arms folded like this. He said, took you boys quite a while to feed those horses, didn't it? And of course, he'd been watching us all the time. I don't really remember what else he said, but he was disappointed that I'd misled him. And he later found out that we had been shooting at the bobcat. He didn't care. He let us shoot all we wanted to. That wasn't bad. But that I hadn't told him the complete truth about why I needed the flashlight. He was disappointed. That's the story that I wanted to leave, but he always taught us a lesson, one way or the other. Not always the way we wanted to learn the lesson, but he was a kind man, he was a good man, he was a smart man. 13-year-old kids couldn't fool him very much. But this barn now looks a whole lot smaller than it did to me back when I was 13 years old, I thought it was a lot bigger than that. But that's it. That's the original barn. This is the original chicken coop. There's another little tack room just over behind here that we'll get a picture of a little later. So Mauricio Bowman and Jack Nixon became great friends as cousins, one from Mexico, one from Utah. We learned a lot of lessons from our aunt and uncle. Well, Uncle Harold had an interesting way of teaching. When you know you told him a fib, you knew that he knew you told him a fib. But he wasn't highly critical. In fact, he told me something one time that made me feel a lot better about little fibs. I remember this from 80 years ago. This was something that I had heard him repeat a few times. He said, "What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve." Meaning, if you don't get all the story, you don't know for sure what the whole story is. But sometimes it might be better to not tell the whole story, because that keeps the heart from grieving over what you say. So that gave me a little bit of credibility for not telling the whole truth. I learned that I shouldn't tell lies. I felt bad that I'd misled him. But it was the only thing I could think of at the moment.